Thanks for joining. Data Speaks. This is where Paradigm Technology talks to different industry experts about all of the great things going on in our crazy technology and consulting industry. Today, I am joined by Josh Petla, and we are going to be talking about the multi-cloud journey. But first off, let me introduce myself and introduce Paradigm. So I'm Chris Gately, Chief Revenue Officer of Paradigm Technology. I have the great fortune to work with many of our clients out there on the power of Paradigm. Paradigm's been around for about 25 years, and really our focus is on cloud and digital business transformation, things of those kind of things, and delivering things such as strategy, projects, and managed services across those capabilities. Really what we do is we focus on something called the power of Paradigm. And the power of Paradigm is helping our clients understand their vision, what's driving that vision, but most importantly, how do we quantify the vision that they have, and how do we help them achieve those quantification, those goals? So that's really Paradigm. But let me jump into Josh. Josh, you've been in the industry for quite a while. You're a multi-cloud expert and has helped many clients. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Chris. Yes. Hello, everyone. Josh Petla here. I lead cloud practice here for Paradigm Technology. I live in Texas, Austin, if you're wondering where I'm from. Overall, my experience is about 16 plus years in the industry as a IT consultant, as a leader. Led quite a number of cloud native migrations, cloud native developments, integrations, DevOps, you name it, anything under the cloud space, if you will, in both public and private sectors. So nice to meet you all. We can discuss further, Chris.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. Hey, folks, again, thanks for coming. But let's jump into it. You know, every industry, financial services, manufacturing, CPG, healthcare, they're all moving to the cloud. You know, 76% of companies are out there adopting a multi-cloud strategy. And the top reason that they're saying is to have access to vendor-specific capabilities. These might include best-of-breed services on one platform that simply outshine the competing platform. Or it may be integration with on-premise software that runs mission-critical workloads. No matter what the reason, the multi-cloud journey is real. It needs to be planned diligently to future-proof your organization. You know, Gartner forecasts that worldwide end user spending on public cloud services will grow to almost 400 billion this year. That's staggering. As we've seen with ChatGPT and Google Bard, new competitive offerings are coming out daily from cloud providers. And the ability to use multiple clouds or migrate from one cloud to the other can really deliver a competitive advantage for you, our clients. Josh, you know, how can folks find flexibility and avoid things like lock-in to a single cloud provider?
That's a great question, Chris. Let me start with a simple answer, right? Reduce your dependency on any one provider and allow for some level of flexibility. So what does that mean? Let's look into some factoids, right? When an organization, depending on where you're in your cloud journey, if you are cloud curious, cloud born, cloud mature, you would want to think through what are my dependencies with the cloud provider. For example, how long are my contracts with a particular cloud provider? What are the tool sets I'm committing to when it comes to using cloud provider services native tool set? So a couple of things that you want to think through. As you kind of think through this, as you implement your multi-cloud journey, this will definitely enhance your thinking. Okay, these are the things I got to watch out for. So let's dig into one other example on what that means. What are the challenges you would want to keep an eye out for? For instance, let's take an example of open source tools. If you're able to use, let's say, Jenkins for DevOps or Postgres, that is an open source platform. So if you take those examples and your application workloads are also continue to use, but a cloud version that offered by cloud provider, those are some of the things you can have your workloads be flexible so that you're avoiding your vendor lock-in. And one other thing too, like as you migrate your data from one cloud to another, if you're sticking to a cloud native service, which means that you would have to do a lot of amount of work for you to migrate that out for a different cloud provider. So you got to think through some of those nuances. I can give you an example. So how organizations can avoid this. One organization we've helped in the past is that they wanted to explore what a multi-cloud firm means, meaning, okay, I have some workloads in one cloud provider, and then I need to figure out if it makes sense for my organization as an owner, for your department, for your team, for your organization, think through what it makes sense for me for a different cloud provider. So they actually partnered with us. We helped them understand and come up with a tailored multi-cloud decision framework, right? Which means that this is your application stack. These are the softwares you're going to use. These are the third-party dependent softwares we've been using so far. Figure out if there's Windows workloads or Linux workloads or open stack tools, right? So we help them kind of walk them through different nuances. What does Windows workload mean for you? What does a Linux workload mean for you? What does a Postgres mean for you? Kind of help them guide through that different migration decision framework. And again, this is a tailored solution. Every organization is unique, which we know. So these are some of the ways we can help you get there so that you can stay ahead of this vendor lock-in issue.
Those are great points, Josh. Especially, noted, the use that, especially noted that use of open source services, right? Open source tools and services that are not tied to any particular cloud provider, which can help you avoid, that vendor lock-in. Creating that obfuscation layer, that can enable you to switch from cloud providers instantly. That's an incredibly important for organizations as they look to the future. As Josh, expanding beyond lock-in, which is, obviously the goal of most cloud service providers, each provider is unique. Google with their global network, and Bard, Microsoft with ChatGPT and their Office 365, which they're known for, and things of that nature. Salesforce with our CRM and service platform, AWS with their many built-in features. How do folks establish the right architecture to take advantage of those unique capabilities of each cloud provider and maximize their outcomes and investment?
Yeah, so there is no set method per se, but this is what I can stress on though. Every cloud provider is unique. So you gotta take advantage of what their strengths and skill sets are, right? So what does that mean for you? So let's take a look at an example, right? For instance, one cloud provider is pretty strong at data platform. One cloud provider is pretty strong at domain services. So what does that mean for you? So there is this concept called well-architected framework. A lot of cloud providers that they actually prescribe that they want you to apply these pillars when you're determining a particular architecture for your application in the cloud. Some of these are, let's say, operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and sustainability. Let's unpack a couple of these, right? Security. When it comes to security, you would want to understand cloud providers prescribe it's a shared responsibility model. What does that mean for you? So cloud providers are responsible for the infrastructure, for the physical location where where servers are hosted and where applications can go and sit. And the responsibility on who get access, what type of access, that is the responsibility of the organization. So these are some of the things you would want to pay attention to because it's a shared responsibility model. So that way you can stay ahead of the security pillar so that you can better track the data breaches that might happen or that might not happen, or any events that might come up and that might not come up, right? As long as you follow these best practices, you're in good shape when it comes to that pillar. The next thing is cost optimization. You want to make sure that you're right sizing, picking the right service for your workload. If not, you pick a service that's going to cost you X number of dollars, whereas if you pick the right resource, it's going to cost you cents per day, cents per second, right? So you'd want to think through what are the cost optimization that's going to look like. And also at the same time, you want to look at the performance efficiency too. There are different kinds of offerings at the virtual machine level. You want to use a compute optimizer or a memory optimizer. Picking the right instance type will also help you with the performance efficiency. So these are some of the pillars that you would want to think through when you apply this layer for your application that will be migrated into any one of the cloud providers. So we briefly talked about it. So which means that by approaching this and using this methodology, you would be able to gain some insights, make a well-informed decision and a data-driven decision so that you can follow along with your multi-cloud journey.
Yeah, those are, it's good, really good points, Josh. Choosing the best provider for a specific workload or application, just so true. I mean, positive, it resonates with everybody. Josh, you've seen and executed many cloud environments, right? How have you dealt with the complexity that a multi-cloud strategy brings? I mean, a lot of different moving parts in there for somebody to manage. How do you work through that complexity?
Before I kind of share how we can manage that, let me walk through a couple of themes, if you will. Complexity can come in terms of especially managing a multi-cloud, people skills, because now your people has to be trained on multiple clouds. The costs, meaning you have to have some similar infrastructure to support on both clouds, and also think through some of the risks, right? So you got to think through these themes and these challenges that might add up. So given these themes, what are the things you can do? Some best practices and benefits that you can apply. So first of all, you got to focus on your priority is security. So you want to make sure your data is secure, whichever cloud is going to reside in. You want to make sure that the agility of your workloads as they deploy. So you want to make sure that they're pretty easy. And as you're adopting new services and new applications with much more easier pace, right? So that is another thing. And the third thing I want to focus is like compliance. So no matter which cloud provider you're in, you're responsible for your regulatory bodies. So you want to make sure these three themes are applied when it comes to what does that mean in terms of complexity. Now we talked about some of the complexity challenges. Let's dig through. Okay, Josh, so what does that mean for me? How can I give me a path forward, right? So let's take a look at it. First, you got to choose the right tools and right services, depending on what your application stack is, what your application workload is, which we talked about. Next, make sure that you're automating your processes, meaning your batch jobs, your daily data transfers, or any alerting and monitoring you're going to set up. Make sure you automate those and ensure that your security policies are in place, the right access to the right personnel, right? You got to monitor your performance before a system goes down. As long as you've set up your right alerting and monitoring, you can stay ahead of the curve. And then another important one is you got to plan for DR and BC purposes. You won't need it unless you require it, right? Any disaster recovery and business continuity. So you want to make sure that you have a plan set in place and periodically test it. But these are the key themes, I would say, that will help you come up with a consistent and a holistic approach on how you can navigate this complexity. So I'm going to actually walk you through a quick example, right? So for this, in this scenario, let's take you're in a multi-cloud journey, and let's say you're with AWS in one cloud and few workloads, and in Azure and for the other workloads. One easy way, I'm going to give you a tip right now. Easiest way to manage and deploy your applications is by using a tool called Terraform. So what does Terraform do? So before I get to Terraform, AWS has their own way of deploying cloud stack templates, so you can programmatically deploy infrastructure. And then Azure has ARM templates, and recently Bicep. You can also do a CDK and CLI. But Terraform is a cloud agnostic tool set that will help you deploy your tools in a single code base, meaning your team members who are supporting these workloads, they'll have to train on one particular infrastructure as a code framework. And depending on the cloud they will go at the end of the day, they'll have to rename the cloud service name, right? So that's one way you can think through on how you can come up with a consistent and holistic approach in this scenario. And the one good example I can share is that one of the clients we help with, they're a global leader in home security solutions. So they wanted to migrate from on-premise to cloud. One of the couple of key goals for them are also like, I want to modernize my integration architecture. I also noticed that my infra costs and there's a lot of tech debt. So what we ended up doing was Paradigm, since we've done this quite a bit, we implemented an API integration center of excellence, and we create our own flywheels. What does that mean? We partner with a vendor. Informatica is a great partner of ours. We work with the ISCS, Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services. By implementing a solution using our partner and the partner software, we were able to achieve the 40% of migration. We were able to done via automation. We still have to do some manual work, but 40% is not a small percentage that we can discount, right? So that helped them migrate faster. Overall performance improved by 32%. And Paradigm team, we are pretty good at meeting the client where they are and what their budget goals are. We were able to deploy a hybrid model with onshore team and also offshore team, thus by helping overall project costs and also increase the project velocity.
Hey, that's a great example, Josh. Thanks. Especially that obfuscation layer that they've put between their applications and their cloud providers using, that informatic IICS, IDMC thing. It looks like we got a question. The question is, how do you typically approach a cloud migration? Are there any high-level steps you can talk us through? We do have some accelerators around that. Josh, I think I'm going to table this question till the end. Nicola, I think we have some slides, a slide or two that we can bring up at the same time and kind of talk through that approach for folks and show them, how we accelerate the journey through our knowledge there. So if you could bring that up at the end, and then folks, I'm going to table that to the end. As the questions do come in, though, I'll continue to bring them up. Josh, going through some more stats, I was reading the other day that, by 2025, 51% of IT spending on application and infrastructure software, as well as business process services, system infrastructure, will have shifted from traditional on-prem solutions to the cloud. That's 51% of IT spending. That's a lot. Well, this shift's not only just going to affect the technology, but the people and the processes. How do you navigate the people, process, technology challenge?
This is one of my favorite topics, Chris, I'll admit. So every organization, they are built with the right people and the right technologies they're using to support their customers, and then the right processes. Because people and technology with the process, that's a perfect formula, right? So I can go all day long, but for the sakes of the webinar, you would want to think through when it comes to costs, is like we briefly discussed the complexity and learning multiple cloud providers and the skill set and whatnot. So managing and optimizing resources across multiple platforms, that's one of the challenge. When it comes to people, process, and technology, right? Additionally, if you don't right size your machines, and if your people doesn't have the right skill set to right size the machines in the cloud, that's another issue. So these are a couple of challenges that we gotta think through when it comes to people, process, and technology. So let's actually look at some of the best practices that we can use or deploy in this scenario. First and foremost, these are some of the themes I'm extracting from the previous engagement we support our clients. Number one step, define your requirements. What are the requirements in terms of this application one, migrating to a particular cloud, or two applications migrating to cloud one and cloud two. So first, you got to understand your requirements, what that means. It means the application stack, learn more about it, security requirements, performance requirements, all that good stuff. Once you have that, the second step would be pick the right cloud provider, meaning when it comes to this particular cloud provider, this is a bad job, which means that I would use a pretty workload, a service within the cloud that will actually enhance my overall data processing, right? That's the right cloud provider for this particular example. Once you have that, define your architecture. Okay, now that you know what you're working with, now that you know which cloud provider makes sense, now you have to build a blueprint for a house, if you will. Okay, this application will have this number of VPCs, this number of VNets, these are private, these are public, all the plumbing and wiring, right? You gotta design your architecture. Once you have the blueprint of the architecture and set up those or deploy those architecture elements, then the next step is migrating your applications and data, meaning the server migration comes first, and then data migration comes first. Once those are completed and migrate over for these two applications that we're talking about, now the next one is optimizing this particular cloud migration solution. So now we have it. So tweaking it in terms of memory optimization, CPU utilization, storage optimization, some of the things that I can talk to right now. So these are the themes and practices that you would want to think through as you kind of follow along. By using these principles, I think you'll be pretty much easily able to kind of get an idea what my costs are going to be when it comes to people, process, and technology. Let me actually walk you through a decision guide that we have used with our clients in the past. So to the core of it, we're going to start off with what is the network connectivity going to look like, meaning in a hybrid scenario where you have on-prem here, cloud one and cloud two, what is my network connectivity going to look like? Are we going to use, let's say, an Azure Express route, for instance? Are you going to use an AWS Direct Connect? So you got to have that as a first core implementation as part of your addition framework. What do I have today? What do I need to implement? Once you have that, let's pick an application one. Let's do a deep dive on application one, which means the application stack, any licensing models that I got to think through. Once you have that, how is the application being managed today? Meaning the DevOps and SysOps. DevOps meaning programmatically deploying. What is my environment promotion from dev to prod, right? You got to think through that. SysOps meaning alerting and monitoring. Are there good insights that I can use based on my logs that application is generating in the cloud? Once you have that, now you've done your homework and research for your application one and application two. Using these three data points, data themes for your data points, then you'll be able to do a discussion exercise. As a group, you'll come together. Your DBA team, your sysadmin team, your network team, your security team, come back and decide like as a group, okay, this application makes sense based on this nuance. This application makes sense based on these other different data points. Once you align on that, now you're ready. You're going to pick a target cloud and then go ahead and create a target cloud architecture and start migrating. So this station framework at a high level will definitely help you think through in a methodical way what this means when you're migrating an application, either cloud one or cloud two.
Hey, Josh, that's great. I love the bullseye effect there and, that multi-cloud journey and how you've broken that out. Really good points. Hey, a lot of our clients, especially the financial services focused ones, are apprehensive about, how do you maintain regulatory compliance when moving to the cloud? Not to mention, a multi-cloud environment. What's been your experience there, and what do you recommend?
Yeah, so before you want to pick which cloud you want to go to, you would want to understand what are your data requirements, what are your compliance requirements, what are regulatory requirements, right? So cloud providers offer different flavors, a FedRAMP low, FedRAMP moderate, FedRAMP high. What does that mean? Based on your data requirements and compliancy requirements, you would want to stick with a FedRAMP moderate or FedRAMP high, meaning FedRAMP high is more like, let's say you're working on federal projects and you have pretty much tight requirements that you can only use S3 in one particular region because you don't want your data traveling outside the country. You don't want your citizens' data in Europe, right? If that's a requirement for your organization. So think through that, right? And there's another flavor is a FedRAMP moderate, which is most of the clients we support go and utilize and pick that offering of a cloud, which means that you have much more flexibility. You get to taste and see new features because cloud service providers, they keep on upgrading and enhancing every 18 months. So FedRAMP moderate kind of equals to a commercial version of your cloud provider. So you got to understand your nuance based on who you're serving, what are your requirements that you got to stick to. So now we talked about at a high level, which offering you got to select. Now let's think through. Let's come back to your enterprise level. So first, you got to figure out your access control, meaning I kind of mentioned about this a couple of times. This is very key, guys, because the right access, the right people are key for you to be very solid and robust in your data and how you're protecting data. Auditing requirements. Some organizations have auditing requirements like 3 years or 7 years or 10 years. You want to make sure that you're following those timelines and durations. The next thing comes to your infrastructure. Are you doing the right patch management? Which means if you're using an open source tool, as we discussed, open source software, and then there is a security vulnerability that actually came on, and then that open source software has been updated to tighten up those loopholes, which means that you got to be on point and on time to make sure that your production workloads has those open source security vulnerabilities being patched. So which means that you got to think through your vulnerability scanning. You got to have some sort of a direction, a proactive way to stay ahead of these announcements and upgrades and patches. And the next thing is people. You got to have your people learn about the security awareness training. What are the different things that are coming ahead? Your security, you got to pretty closely work with the security office to make sure that the team members are trained and it's being broadcasted so that the developers who are working at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they're in the loop. So you got to have a good robust posture on that as well. So by kind of following these, picking the right offering, looking at your enterprise level standards, and then a mechanism to collaborate and communicate out to your teams and within your organization. These are some of the things I would say that you would want to think through in terms of if you're being compliant in a regulatory way. So one thing I can add to this is, Chris, I forgot to mention in my previous topic. This is something we actually helping with one of our clients. So we are building a data analytics platform. They're a pretty seasoned customer of ours. They now have a good terabytes of data. They're trying to figure out, make sense of what does that mean? I want to do some more advanced analytics on this. So now let's actually apply, right? So first, understand the data, structured or unstructured. What services are being used? Now let's build a data lake for you. Once you have built a data lake for you, then let's understand what does that mean for you? Meaning, what are you trying to get out of this data? What business value? Are you thinking about a loyal customer? Or I want to provide some incentives based on the loyal customer. So get that data, meaning you got to pick the right service to do the machine learning model and AI models. Once you get that, now we have to provide your models that spit out the data in a good KPI and dashboards. In all this scenario, you got to make sure that your data, as it traverses from different sources all the way into your data cloud, let's say Snowflake in this example, you want to make sure that you're following all the regulatory compliances, all the security events, all the tools you're using, and are they being ready, right size, best practices in place. So this is one other thing I can say as a real example that we can share on how we want to think through as you implement a solution like a data platform when you're bound by tight regulatory compliance requirements.
Yeah, that's a great point. Josh, we've similar opportunities with, for example, a number of very large, too big to fail banks, but also a large credit union that we've worked with as well in trying to help them not just move, their data to the cloud and modernize their data infrastructure, right? Which has had a great impact on them, by the way. It saved them costs of about 1.3 million. But what it really did is enabled their compliance people to actually get to the data they need to report on the regulatory compliance things that they need for whether it be the OCC or others. And it's really had a great impact saving them productivity wise. It increased by about 73%. So they weren't spending all their time trying to gather that data. There's lots of different ways that, we can really impact, regulatory compliance, but the impact overall is move it to the cloud. And oftentimes you do get a lot of benefits when it comes from financial and from productivity. Hey, let's jump into Q&A. It looks like, let's go back to that first question that was asked. And that was, how do you typically approach a cloud migration? And are there any high-level steps you can talk us through? Do you want to take a stab at that one, Josh?
Yep, definitely. So now we talked good amount through these different examples, a decision guide and whatnot. Now let's take a high-level step, as Chris was alluding to, and I'm glad you asked this question because you can take some value as you leave this webinar, the Data Speak session, right? So what does that mean? So when it comes to implementation, first, we've seen most of the clients, they are now switching to Agile or already Agile. So you got to define on project methodology, what that means. And then once that is done, another artifact is a feature state architecture, which I talked about, target architecture, picking the right services, a new home, right? So you got to understand what your target architecture will look like. And then what is an implementation plan? Is it going to be 6 sprints? A sprint could be 2 weeks, or it could be 12 sprints, right? A 3-month engagement. Understand what that migration plan. Once you have that, you'll come up with a backlog of user stories and then sprint cycles. And this kind of translate into a high-level work tasks, meaning first you got to pick out your, if it's AWS account or a group of AWS accounts, for your application, meaning dev will have one account, prod will have a different account, because you want to isolate your dev and production workload so that the blast radius, when something happens, is very minimal. Once you have that step figured out as step 1, Now you're going to build and deploy your infrastructure, meaning your application one is built, developed in a programmatical way. In this scenario, let's say Terraform. Once you kind of write your Terraform modules, go ahead and deploy infrastructure. Once that is done, now we're talking about server and data replication. When it comes to server and data replication, either you can capture a virtual machine of your on-prem, grab that and upload it into the cloud provider, and make any adjustments and tweaks. That's when it comes to and install the application that's going to run your code base, right? Install that. And the second part is data replication. Let's say if it's a small application, let's say a SQL export and import. That's pretty easy, right? You export that and import that, let's say a non-critical backend Office application. But we're talking about, let's say, a petabyte of data. Obviously, you can't do that when export and import. There's so many things you got to think through in that scenario. So in that scenario, the cloud providers offer a pretty robust solution, a byte-by-byte replication methodology, where it'll take a month or two to make sure that all your petabytes of data is being copied onto your new target environment. And when the time is right, you take a pause and say, all right, this weekend, let's actually pause for now and do the cutover. Before we do the cutover, there's a pre-cutover. The pre-cutover means you will do a mock test. Okay, if you were to do the cutover this week, which means that, okay, network team, what are you going to do? DNS team, what are your responsibilities? Application team, what are your responsibilities? DBA, you kind of come with a mock cutover plan. And once you have that, then when your already scheduled cutover date, you actually execute them. You let your customers know, hey, system is down. We'll be down for an hour or two on a weekend or Saturday night when traffic is usually less busy. You can identify the cutover time and then you do the cutover. Now your application is the new home, right? So you kind of see what that means, observe and monitor your application, how it's performing well in the cloud. Once you have that, now you go back and then decommission all the different older software, older servers, data, archive it well, but decommission all the data servers, application servers in on-prem. So these are the high level progression steps. And on top of that, you can see like dev, test, UAT, prod, depending on your environment best practices and how many environments you manage. You can qualify them as non-prod and prod. In non-prod, you can have dev, test, UAT, QA. So these are the typical environments we've seen supporting our clients. So top, you're talking about different artifacts you need, and bottom, there's different steps for a typical cloud migration for your application and the different environments you need to support.
Excellent. Those are really good points, Josh, and thanks for kind of presenting that whole journey for folks. There's about 3 more questions, and what we'll do is we'll actually send answers to the questions out after as well. But we're really just going to get into, I think, one more because we're really, I think, running out of time. Josh, someone's asked us, hey, how would you determine a serverless versus a Kubernetes versus cloud virtual machine for application workloads when you're moving to the cloud?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So there is a lot of enthusiasm when folks are like, hey, let's go move to cloud. What is the newest piece of technology out there? Microservices, Kubernetes, let's go ahead and implement that. But before we do that, let's take a step back, right? We need to understand why, what is this application doing? Is it a production critical application, or is it a backend application, or it could be like a simple Office application for developers to maintain and modify code, right? So you got to understand what is this application and what is the value and purpose. Why this is important, because based on the examples I just mentioned, if it's a backend application, right now we are running it on a virtual machine on-prem that's running 24/7. Turns out you only need to run that particular file transfer from one location to another location, so you can support your application twice a day. Right now we do a cron job and run it in the cloud. Obviously, you don't want a full machine up and running 24/7, right? You can write a serverless function. It could be an Azure function, it could be a Lambda, depending on which cloud you're going to select. And then you execute that. And the way you can trigger this is cloud providers are very creative in that. It's an event-based trigger. Let's say a file dropped in, then this job would kick in, run for maybe like 10 minutes, and the process is done, and then there's no other compute that you need to use. So this actually goes into the cost aspect of it. Pick the right service for your right job. And now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, meaning right now you're managing on-prem a bunch of APIs in a Kubernetes environment. So which means that, yes, you have an option to migrate that into a cloud, but you got to understand, what am I doing? So either your solution would be, can I use this bunch of 500 APIs using a fully cloud provide managed solution? Or no, I don't have that time. I'm running out of my data center lease. In that case, okay, let's actually go ahead and use replicate similar solution and lift and shift approach in the cloud, meaning you'll have a bunch of containers supporting your APIs. And good thing is that you can load balance them so that, let's say, fiscal year end, and you have a lot of workloads, a financial customer, there's a lot of transaction being happening on this API. You can load balance those set of 50 APIs out of 500 or 100, put them on a load balance, right? So this will help you right size, rightly allow end users who are consuming these APIs in a different way. So as you can see, on the left side, you have backend job. It has to be run only twice a day. On the other side, there's a periodic requirement and demand for an application. So understanding the why this application and what it's doing will definitely help you pick a right solution in the cloud.
Great answer. Thanks, Josh. We've covered so many different things today. We've covered everything from vendor lock-in to the complexity and how to deal with and make it a lot simpler for the multi-cloud environment, to, people, process, technology, to regulatory compliance. You've really been great about sharing your knowledge and your experience, which is really extensive, obviously, in all of these subjects with our clients and our friends out on the webinar. Folks, every journey is different, right? Not everyone starts in the same place at the same time with the same tools. We at Paradigm are here to really partner with you to help you map out the best path for your organization. There's a couple of ways we can do that. Please reach out to us. As you see, our contact information is here on this last slide, and will also be available at any time. But some of the things we can do to come in and help you are, one is the cloud migration decision framework. So helping you with basically a migration decision workshop. And that's coming in for a couple hours with Josh and a few others to talk through with your team, really what is the value of the cloud? Where are you headed with the cloud? What are the different types of clouds, and what are the benefits of each of those unique clouds, that we can help with some of the decision frameworks that we've talked about through this webinar. Secondarily, helping you with a application rationalization engagement. We've done this many times, time and time again. In fact, we even did it for a very, very large airline that became 3 airlines, became 1, where we help them make all the decisions on their application rationalization to, say, identify which ones stay, which one go, which ones are adding value, what's the value that they're adding. Great things that we've done there. So we'd love to help you. But please, those are 2 ideas. We've got many other ways we can help, but please reach out. We'll look forward to hearing from you. Again, really appreciate you taking the time to spend with Josh and I and learn more about multi-cloud and the opportunities there. We'll look forward to connecting with you in the future. In the meantime, thank you again, Josh, for all of your insights and your knowledge and all you're doing for all our great clients. Chris Gately here signing off. Have a great day, everybody. Again, appreciate you and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.